Before the glow of a doorbell camera and the chirp of a keypad, rural American families guarded their homes with nothing but instinct, animals, and hard-won cunning. We're counting down 30 primitive farmhouse security tricks that kept families safe long before alarms and cameras ever existed. From screaming birds that outperformed any motion sensor, to a bluff so simple a lone widow could turn back a stranger with a pair of boots, these methods cost pennies and worked for generations. Number 12 was louder than a siren and impossible to sneak past. Number 4 let a family sound a silent warning across an entire valley. And the trick at number 1 was so powerful that no burglar alarm has ever truly replaced it. These weren't gadgets, they were wisdom. Let's begin the countdown with number 30. Number 30, the crushed gravel path was the first line of defense on countless American farms, a security system you could hear before you could see. Families laid down river gravel, crushed limestone, or oyster shells along the walk from the gate to the front door, and the reason was simple: no one could cross it quietly. Every footstep announced itself with a sharp crunch that carried through open windows on a still night. A courting boy, a traveling peddler, or a man with bad intentions all sounded the same on that gravel, and inside the house, ears pricked up. In an age before porch lights, sound did the watching. A load of gravel cost almost nothing and lasted years, and to this day, the crunch of boots on stone is, for many, the very sound of someone coming home. Number 29. The swept yard was a Southern and Appalachian tradition that doubled as quiet protection. Instead of grass, families kept the ground around the house bare and hard-packed, sweeping it clean each morning with a brush broom of dogwood or broom sedge. It kept snakes from hiding near the porch and cut the risk of fire from dry weeds. But it did something else too. Bare, swept earth held a footprint like a signature. Come morning, a mother could read who had crossed her yard in the night: the deer, the shpumpchiri, the neighbor's dog, or the man in boots who had no business being there. A stranger's tracks by the smokehouse told a story no words could. The swept yard was a ledger written in dirt, and it never lied. Number 28. Long before floodlights, farm wives planted their defenses right under the windows. Climbing roses with thumb-sized thorns, hawthorn, blackberry brambles, and honey locust were set deliberately beneath every ground floor sash. The flowers were pretty enough to satisfy anyone who asked, but their real job was cruel and simple. No one slipped through a window guarded by a wall of thorns without leaving skin, blood, and torn cloth behind. A prowler feeling his way along the dark side of the house met 1,000 needles instead of an easy sill. The plants cost nothing but a cutting from a neighbor and a season's patience, and they grew thicker and meaner every year. It was a defense that bloomed in spring and drew blood in the fall. Number 27. Before barbed wire strung across the plains, the Osage orange hedge was the fence that fought back. Farmers across the Midwest planted these fast-growing trees in tight rows, then bent and wove the young trunks into a living barrier said to be horse-high, bull-strong, and hog-tight. The branches bristled with hard, inch-long thorns that could puncture a boot sole or lame a horse. A hedge like this ringed the homestead, funneling anyone approaching toward the one gap the family could watch, the front gate. It kept livestock in and unwelcome men out, all without a single nail. Even after wire fencing arrived in the 1870s, these gnarled green walls stood for generations, and many still mark the old property lines today, thorny ghosts of a self-defended frontier. Number 26. The drop bar was the lock of the frontier, older and far tougher than any keyed mechanism. A heavy timber of oak or hickory rested in iron brackets or carved wooden slots on either side of the door, dropped into place each night with a solid thunk. No key existed to be lost or copied. No lock existed to be picked. To get through that door, a man had to break the door itself or the frame around it, and that meant noise, time, and a household roused and waiting. Cabins on the frontier lived and died by this bar. Families slid it home at dusk as naturally as they banked the fire. Simple, silent, and unbreakable by any quiet hand, the drop bar turned a plank door into a fortress gate. Number 25, the humble window stick was the cheapest burglar deterrent ever devised, and it still works today. A farm family would cut a length of broom handle or a whittled dowel to fit snugly in the track of a sash or sliding window. With that stick wedged in place, the window simply would not rise, no matter how hard a hand pushed from outside. A latch could be jimmied with a knife blade in seconds, but a solid stick of wood laughed at pocket knives. It cost nothing, made no sound, and could be lifted out in an instant by anyone inside who knew it was there. Grandmothers swore by it, propping every downstairs window before bed. Sometimes the oldest trick is the one no thief can beat. Number 24. When a family wanted early warning at the edge of the property, they turned to what the trash heap gave them. Tin cans, glass bottles, and bits of scrap metal were strung along a low wire that ran between fence posts or across a gap in the hedge. Brush against that wire in the dark, and the whole line erupted in a clatter of tin and glass that no man could silence in time. It was crude, ugly, and brilliant, a tripwire alarm assembled for free from cast-offs. Soldiers used the same trick in wartime trenches, and farm families used it around chicken coops and back gates. On a quiet country night, that sudden rattle of cans could bring a whole household to the windows, lamp lit and ready. Number 23, inside the house, a smaller version of the same idea guarded the door itself. A tin can holding a handful of dried beans, corn kernels, or pebbles was hung by a string from the latch or balanced on top of the door. Ease that door open even an inch, and the can toppled and spilled its rattling contents across the floorboards with a racket that jolted every sleeper awake. It cost a pinch of beans and a length of twine. Light sleepers and mothers of small children relied on it, not just against strangers, but against a wandering toddler slipping out into the night. This little rattle alarm asked for no batteries and never failed. It was the smoke detector of its day, only it warned of two-legged trouble. Number 22. The cowbell on the gate was a sound every farm family knew by heart. A single bell, wired to the swing of the front gate or the barn door, rang out clear and unmistakable whenever it moved. Family coming home rang it. The wind sometimes rang it. But so did any stranger fumbling with the latch after dark. Because everyone in the household knew that bell's voice, an unexpected clang at the wrong hour, meant one thing: someone was at the gate who had not been invited. Dogs took their cue from it, barking the moment it sounded. A cowbell cost a quarter and lasted a lifetime hanging in the weather. Its bright, rolling ring was both a welcome and a warning, depending entirely on the hour it rang. Number 21. If the small bells warned the house, the great farm bell warned the whole countryside. Mounted high on a post or the barn gable, this heavy cast iron bell could be heard for 2 or 3 miles across open land. Families rang it to call men from the fields for dinner, but everyone understood its other meaning. A wild, frantic, unbroken peal was a cry for help, fire, injury, or intruders. Neighbors dropped their tools and came running or riding at that sound, often with shotguns in hand. In country with no telephone and no sheriff for 20 miles, the bell was the alarm system, and the police call rolled into one. A prowler who heard it start to ring knew his time was up because half the valley was already on its way. Number 20. A lit lantern in the window did quiet, patient work all night long. Set on the sill of a front room, a single coal oil lamp told the darkness that this house was awake and watching, even when the family slept. To a man scouting farms for an easy mark, a dark, silent house was an invitation, but a lit window meant eyes, questions, and risk. Some families burned a lamp only when the menfolk were away, a bluff to suggest someone sat up on guard. Others used the light as a signal. A lamp moved from one window to another could tell a neighbor across the fields that trouble was brewing. Kerosene was cheap, and a night's flame cost only pennies. In the country dark, light itself was a kind of armor. Number 19. A woman alone on a remote farm learned to manufacture a man out of thin air. She staged the evidence of one everywhere a stranger might look. A large pair of muddy work boots sat on the porch step. A man's heavy coat and hat hung on the hook by the door. A pipe and tobacco pouch rested on the windowsill in plain view. To anyone sizing up the place, it looked like a husband was home, and that alone turned most trouble away. Widows and wives whose husbands worked distant jobs or served in wars relied on this quiet theater for years. Some even called out a gruff, "It's all right, I'll get it," toward an empty room when a knock came at night. The cheapest guard on any farm was the illusion of a man who was not there. Number 18. The same trick of illusion protected families who had no dog at all. A heavy chain was staked in the front yard, its end left lying in the grass as if a large animal had just wandered off. Beside it sat a battered metal dish and a well-gnawed bone. A hand-lettered sign warned, "Beware of dog." To a stranger creeping up the lane at night, every shadow now held teeth. Nobody wanted to test whether the phantom animal was real, and most simply chose an easier target down the road. It cost a length of old chain and a borrowed bone. The bluff worked precisely because a farm dog was so common that its absence was hard to imagine. Sometimes the fiercest guard dog on the place was the one that never existed. Number 17. Suspicion had its own quiet tools, and one of the oldest was a dusting of ash or flour. A family who feared a prowler had been circling the house at night would scatter a fine layer of wood ash or flour across the threshold, the porch boards, or the dirt beneath a window before going to bed. In the morning, the powder told the truth. A clean surface meant a peaceful night. A single boot print pressed into the dust meant someone had come close in the dark and might come again. It let a farmer confirm his fears before he lost sleep over a shadow, and it pointed him toward exactly which door or window needed watching. Cheap, silent, and impossible to fool, the dusted threshold caught what human eyes had slept through. Number 16. Some of the best security was built right into the house before a single nail was driven. Farmhouses were often laid out so that the kitchen window, where the woman of the house spent most of her waking hours, looked straight down the lane toward the road and the front gate. From the sink or the stove, she could see every wagon, rider, and stranger the moment they turned in, long before they reached the door. That head start was everything. It gave her time to fetch the shotgun, wake a sleeping husband, or send a child running to a neighbor. The placement was no accident. It was folk architecture, passed down by builders who understood that a woman who could see trouble coming had already won half the fight. Number 15. Around the well-kept homestead ran a ring of cleared open ground, and it was there for more than tidiness. Families cut back the brush, felled scrub trees, and mowed the weeds for a good distance in every direction around the house. The reason was hard and practical. Cover hid people. A thicket close to the walls gave a prowler somewhere to crouch, wait, and approach unseen. Open ground gave him nowhere. Anyone crossing that bare stretch toward the house had to do it in full view, exposed to any eye at a window. The same clearing kept wildfires at bay and snakes at a distance, but its oldest purpose was denying an enemy the shadows. On the frontier, a clear field of view was worth more than any wall. Number 14. In many old farmhouses, a certain floorboard always groaned underfoot, and often that was no accident. Families knew exactly which plank, by the door or at the foot of the stairs, would sing out under any weight, and they left it that way on purpose. Household members learned to step over it in the dark out of habit. A stranger moving through the house at night did not, and that sudden loud creak in the small hours was as good as a shouted alarm. In grander homes, the same idea was sometimes built deliberately into the hallways. The loose singing board turned the very floor of the house into a sentry, one that cost nothing and never slept. To this day, that unexpected groan in an old farmhouse can raise the hair on your neck. Number 13. The rooster earned his keep as more than a barnyard alarm clock. Roosters are fiercely territorial and instinctively vocal, and a good one sounded off at anything that disturbed his domain. In the dark, a fox, a stray dog, or a man slipping toward the henhouse. His sudden crowing at an odd hour, well before dawn, told a listening farmer that something had entered the yard. The hens' panicked clucking backed him up. Since chicken thieves were a genuine plague on country life, a vocal rooster stood as the first guard over a family's most stolen property. He cost nothing beyond the feed he already ate. Loud, alert, and endlessly suspicious, the rooster was a living alarm that patrolled the yard for free every hour of the night. Number 12. If there was ever an alarm system with feathers, it was the guinea fowl. These homely, speckled birds possessed a screaming metallic call so loud and relentless that nothing could sneak past them. A snake in the grass, a hawk's shadow, a wagon in the drive, or a stranger easing open the gate. All of it set the whole flock shrieking at once in a racket that carried for a quarter mile. Farm families kept guineas specifically as watchmen, and old-timers swore they were better than any dog for sounding the alarm because they never slept deeply and never missed a thing. They needed no training and almost no care. That awful, clattering scream was the sound of a security system that ran on bugs and seeds. Even today, rural folks keep guineas for exactly this reason. Number 11. The goose was the old world's guardian, and it followed families to the American farm. Geese are loud, aggressive, and territorial to a fault, and a flock of them made a formidable line of defense. They hissed, honked, and charged at any intruder, flapped and biting hard enough to bruise a grown man and terrify a child. Their honking alarm carried across the whole farmstead, rousing dogs and people alike. History remembered geese guarding the citadel of ancient Rome, and country families in America knew the same truth. A gaggle of angry geese would confront a stranger long before any human noticed him. They doubled as meat, eggs, and feathers, so they cost nothing extra to keep. Feared and fearless, the watch geese patrolled the yard like a squad of feathered soldiers. Number 10. Of all the farm's defenders, none was more trusted than the dog on the porch. Every homestead kept at least one, and it slept where it could see the lane and hear the gate. Long before a stranger reached the steps, the dog knew, by scent, by sound, by the prickling instinct bred into it over centuries, and it announced him with a bark that rolled across the fields. That warning gave the family time, and the animal's very presence turned most trouble away, since no prowler wanted to face teeth in the dark. The dog asked for nothing but scraps and a kind word. Loyal past reason and alert past sleep, the farm dog was the original alarm, motion sensor, and deterrent all wrapped in fur, and no machine has ever loved the family it guarded. Number 9. The truly prized farm dog was the one that knew the difference between kin and stranger. These animals were not trained by any manual, but shaped by living close to the family, until they greeted every known voice with a wagging tail and met every unknown one with a low, warning growl. A hired man learned to speak to the dog before crossing the yard. A stranger who did not know the sound of a familiar voice found his path blocked and his presence broadcast to the whole house. Some dogs were taught to stay silent for the family's own night movements, but to raise the roof for anyone else. This selective loyalty made them smarter than any alarm, which cannot tell friend from foe. The best of them seemed almost to understand exactly whom they were protecting and from whom. Number 8. Since banks were distant, few, and prone to failure, rural families became masters at hiding what little money they had. The cash rarely sat in one obvious place. It was tucked into the flour bin, sewn into a mattress, rolled inside a coffee tin on a high shelf, or slipped between the pages of the family Bible. The logic was simple. A thief had only minutes inside a house and no time to search a dozen unlikely spots. A burglar might grab a visible purse, but he rarely thought to sift through the flour or unpick a quilt. Spreading valuables across the whole house meant that no single discovery cost a family everything. It was security through patience and secrecy, and many a farm fortune spent its life buried in the pantry. Number 7. For anything too precious to risk, families built hiding places into the very bones of the house. A single floorboard was cut loose and fitted to lift out, revealing a hollow between the joists where deeds, coins, and heirlooms waited in the dark. Others hollowed out a space behind a loose brick in the chimney, above a doorframe, or beneath a false bottom in a cupboard. Only the family knew these caches existed, and a stranger could turn the house over without ever finding them. Building the secret inn during construction meant it left no trace to the searching eye. In an age of bank runs and roving thieves, these hidden hollows were the household safe, and some old farmhouses still surrender forgotten treasures when new owners pull up the floors. Number 6. The root cellar kept more than potatoes and jars of preserves. Dug into a hillside or beneath the house, its thick earthen walls and heavy door made it the strongest room on the property, and families knew it. In times of danger, a passing band of trouble, a violent storm, or a stranger who would not leave, women and children could shelter behind that stout door while the men stood guard above. Some cellars were fitted with a bar on the inside and a small hidden vent, turning them into a refuge that could be held for hours. It was the frontier's storm shelter, safe room, and pantry all in one, carved from the cool, dark earth. When the world above turned dangerous, the family simply went to ground. Number 5. The most watchful farmers began each day with a ritual walk. At first light, before the chores, a man circled his house and outbuildings, reading the ground like a page. Fresh boot prints in the mud, a broken twig on the fence line, a disturbed latch, hoof marks that did not belong. Every sign told him whether the night had been peaceful or whether someone had been testing his defenses. In snow, the story was written even plainer. This daily reading of the land let a family catch a prowler's pattern before it became a break-in and know to sit up watchful the next night. It cost nothing but a habit of attention. The frontier taught that the ground remembered everything, and a wise man learned to read what the darkness had left behind. Number 4. Every close farm family had its own secret language of sound. A particular whistle, a bird call, or a shouted phrase served as a private password that carried across fields and through the woods. A father returning after dark gave the family whistle so no nervous hand mistook him for an intruder. A child in trouble far from the house had a distress call that brought everyone running. Because outsiders did not know these signals, a whistle answered with silence, or with the wrong reply, instantly marked a stranger. It let scattered family members coordinate and warn one another across distances no ordinary voice could cover. Simple as a tune and impossible to counterfeit, the family whistle turned the whole farmstead into a network of ears, each one listening for the sound that meant one of their own. Number 3, farms sat far apart, but families stitched them together with signals that could call for help across the miles. A sheet hung on a particular fence, a lantern set in a certain upstairs window, a column of smoke, or a mirror flashing sunlight all carried agreed-upon meanings between neighbors who could see one another's land. One arrangement of light meant all is well. Another meant come quickly, we are in trouble. In country where the nearest sheriff might be a half-day's ride away, this web of silent signals was the only rapid alarm a family had. A single lamp moved to the wrong window could send a neighbor saddling his horse in the dark. Long before telephones reached the countryside, these codes let isolated homesteads watch over one another like distant sentinels sharing one long, unbroken watch. Number 2, nearly every farmhouse kept a shotgun standing behind the door or resting on pegs above the mantel, and its greatest power was one it seldom had to use. On an isolated farm, hours from any lawman, a family was its own protection, and everyone in the county knew it. That knowledge alone turned most trouble away before it started, because a stranger had no way of knowing who inside was awake and watching. The gun also put meat on the table and kept foxes from the henhouse, so it earned its place many times over. Handled with the deep respect farm children were raised to give it, it stood as the last line of a family's defense. Its quiet presence by the door was often the only argument a stranger needed to hear. Number 1, and the greatest security system rural America ever knew was not a bird, a bell, a dog, or a gun. It was the neighbors. In tight-knit farm country, everyone knew everyone, and a stranger on the road did not go unnoticed for a single mile. The family at the crossroads saw the unfamiliar wagon and mentioned it at church. The man mending his fence watched it pass and remembered the face. Word traveled farm to farm faster than any rider, and an outsider with bad intentions found 100 eyes already on him before he ever reached a door. Neighbors checked on the widow, minded each other's stock, and came running at the sound of the bell. No alarm company has ever matched it, because it was built not from wires but from trust, the simple, powerful knowledge that someone was always looking out for you. That was the real lock on every farmhouse door, and it is the one we have lost most completely of all. These 30 tricks share one quiet truth. Real security never came from a gadget. It came from attention, from animals, from cunning, and above all, from people who watched out for one another. Which of these did your own family use? Tell me in the comments, and if this brought back a memory, share it with someone who grew up on a farm. Thanks for watching.